Okay, we're standing here on Hastings Creek, just downstream of our benchmark site, and we've conducted a habitat quality assessment. We've done an invertebrate assessment. We've done a water quality assessment. One of the other tests that we can do to give us an indication of stream health is juvenile trapping and identification. What I've got here in my hands is what's called a Minnow Trap. And there's several different pieces of equipment that you can use to collect fish. This is probably the simplest and definitely the cheapest piece of equipment that's available. I should point out, before we get into this too much farther, that it's a good idea before you decide to go on a fish trapping expedition to contact your local Department of Fisheries and Oceans or Ministry of Environment office and talk to one of the biologists there. They may be able to help you selecting sample sites, and they may give you an idea of what time of year would be good to trap different species of fish. Different species have different life cycles. Some stay in the stream for a full year, some for 2 or 3 years, some for only a few months. So you need to learn those life cycles before you can decide what time of year is best to do your trapping. The other thing that you should do when you pop into the office is get yourself a collection permit. You need to have that on you when you go into the stream and start catching fish. So now that you've got that out of the way and you've got the permits and everything, we'll explain how this trap works. If I can get you to hold on to that. And it just comes in 2 halves like this, and the 2 halves snap together. And it's just a barrel-shaped mesh screen cage. There's a snap on the top that holds the 2 pieces together, and this is set in the stream. Generally, you want to set the trap just before dark and let it soak overnight and then pick it up again the next morning. One of the problems, especially in urban streams, is if you set the trap during the daytime, there's lots of human predators around that like to pick these up. So we suggest setting them at dusk and letting them soak overnight. When the trap is in the water, you generally orient it in the direction of the current. So if the current's flowing this way, the trap would be sitting like that. You can see there's a funnel entrance on either end with a very narrow opening. Most often, the fish will approach the trap from let's say the stream is flowing this way, the fish will approach the trap from this end, the downstream end, follow the cone up to that narrow opening, scoot in there, and there'll be some bait inside that attracts them to the trap. And they scoot in through that opening. Once they're in there, they have a hard time getting out again. And it's because of the way they're designed. If you see the inside of the trap, you see this cone, and once a fish is inside, when they're trying to find their way out, they usually swim along the wall of the trap. They'll follow these walls, and they have a really hard time finding their way out. So why don't we go ahead and bait the trap. Usually what we use for bait is fish roe, salmon roe or trout roe. If you don't have access to that, you can also use dried cat food, the fish flavored variety, or the tin cat food. You just punch holes in the tin and stick it inside the trap, and that works quite well. So why don't we bait this trap? Now what I like to do, you'll notice there's a piece of string inside there with a loop in it. What I like to do is tie a piece of string just in front of the opening of the trap, and they see that piece of bait swinging back and forth in front of their noses, and it's pretty hard for them to resist. If you just throw the bait on the bottom of the trap, sometimes they'll come up to the outside of the trap and pick at it from the outside without actually going in. We like to wrap the bait, especially salmon roe, we like to wrap it inside of a mesh bag so that when the fish do get inside the trap, the first fish in doesn't eat all the roe. Because once it's gone, then there's nothing there to attract fish that might come along later. So put it inside of a mesh bag and then tie it into this loop. Good gooey stuff, huh?
Very. Thanks for letting me do this part.
Yeah, you get to do the best part. Okay, and if you can slip the top of that row bag, yeah, good twist on it just to hold it in there. Got it? Okay, and then you just cinch down that loop, and the row is hanging in front of the entrance to the trap, ready to go. So just snap it together. If you want to throw that clip on there, or yeah, maybe you got slippery hands. Oh, well done. Okay, so you've got your clip. The trap is clipped together and ready to go. You've got a piece of string on the end of it, and generally what you want to do is find in your reference site area, find some deep pools, preferably pools that have some sort of cover in them, like a log or a cut bank. Any place where fish are likely to hide is a good place to set the trap. And if it's a big pool, you might want to set 2 or 3 traps in there. In your reference site, set as many traps as you can, because it'll give you a good idea of what's present in the reference site. Okay, here's a typical site where you'd set a trap. We've got a nice cut bank here. It's a fairly deep pool. There's some large woody debris in here for cover. This is a good hiding spot for fish. They'll be hanging out in this part of the creek. The other thing that's good about it is it's fairly quiet water. And you don't want to set the trap in the middle of the current, because what happens is the fish will swim into the trap, and if it's sitting in the current overnight, they'll tend to wear themselves out and may even die before you come along to pick up the trap. So make sure it's in quiet water. Just set it down like that, and then tie it off onto a stick or a branch or tree or something. This isn't that stable. You probably want to find something a little more secure than this, so that if high water did come along, it wouldn't wash away. It's a good idea to make notes, maybe even put a piece of flagging tape in the tree back there, just so that when you come back the next day, you know where it's sitting. Maybe write the trap number on the flagging tape, and keep notes on where that trap is. And we're all set to let them sit overnight, and we'll pick it up in the morning. Okay, the trap's been sitting all night long here. Let's just see what it's got in it. We have a catch. Now, it's a good idea not to leave the trap out of the water for any length of time, because the sides of the trap can sometimes knock the scales off the fish if they're bouncing around in a dry trap. So just keep the trap in the water and pour what you've got in the trap into your bucket. Oh, there's one other critter in here. It looks like a crayfish. He's hanging on for dear life. He doesn't want out of there. Okay, so it looks like we've got some salmon and some trout and 1 crayfish. Now, to help you identify the fish, there's a key in the back of the module that shows you the different families of fish. It also shows you the species of salmonids that we find in waters in BC on the west coast. Okay, we've got a couple of fish in the viewing container here. The larger one is a cutthroat trout, and the smaller one is a coho salmon. The coho is probably just come out of the gravel as a young one in the last 3 months or so, and the cutthroat is likely been in this stream for over a year already. And distinguishing characteristics of members of the salmon and trout family, and the family collectively is called salmonids. One of the distinguishing characteristics of that family of fish is an adipose fin, which is the really tiny fin that you see on the top of the back between the dorsal fin, which is the big one on the back, and the tail. It's a little tiny fin. All salmonids have got that fin, whether they're trout or salmon, whitefish, grayling, they all have that fin. Now you can tell the difference between a coho and a cutthroat by the markings, and every salmonid species has got different spotting patterns, different bar patterns on the sides, and other distinguishing characteristics like the size of the mouth and the teeth and so on, and those are all laid out in the key. But a real quick and dirty way to tell the difference between a cutthroat and a coho is to look at the jaw. Underneath the jaw of the fish, on a cutthroat there are 2 orange slashes, and on a coho salmon or any other salmonid, those slashes don't exist. One of the other things you'll notice is the heavy spotting on the cutthroat on both the tail and the dorsal fin. The coho doesn't have that. And one of the distinguishing characteristics of the coho is the white leading edge on the anal fin, and the anal fin is the fin on the bottom, on the belly of the fish, just ahead of the tail. It's got a white leading edge, and that's a distinguishing characteristic of a coho. Okay, Zoanne, you want to help me record the lengths of these fish? Now we're measuring the length from the fork of the tail to the tip of the nose. Just wait for this guy to straighten out a little bit here. Okay, there we go. It's about, we have 8.8 centimeters for the cutthroat. And the coho is 6.2 centimeters. So we've got both coho and cutthroat in the stream. We found crayfish. Salmonids are a really good indicator of a healthy stream. If you find salmonids in the stream, it's a pretty good indication that you've got good water quality and good habitat. So judging from the contents of this trap, the stream comes out looking pretty good.